we have what I consider the best picture to illustrate web security right now today. Right now, what we are doing is we are blocking certain paths. We have this beautiful grass here which we must avoid and never step on, but we're just doing that anyway. I'm going to show you another very good security failure right now. This one's also very good. I like this one a lot. One of my all-time favorites right now because it is out of service, end of life, and fully. We have a joke that, you know, if you pwn a Windows XP box at this stage, it's not really doesn't count, you know, sorry guys. And finally, we're into the actual first slide. So I'm planning to start a little bit early because I have about last time I did this talk, I can talk for about 3 hours on it. So I'm going to try and condense everything into 40 minutes. Now, I'm Irish and I speak a little bit fast in general. So if you're kind of thinking, holy crap, don't understand what the crazy fella from Ireland is speaking, can you actually just go, slow down? It helps. So put your hand up if you don't understand. Doesn't bother me. I'm okay with it. Little bit, if you are tweeting, you can Twitter me at Merrigan. And as I said, I'm actually Irish. And I live over in a neighboring country in Norway. Because, you know, it's a nice little country and I discovered that it existed when I found my wife in New Zealand, of all places. So I want to firstly kind of ask a couple of questions. How many of you have seen this talk before? One person. Can you stay quiet for all the fun stuff? Good, thanks. Don't give away the plot. You know, don't go, oh, this place is really good. It just doesn't really work for us. Now, I'm going to ask another question. Developers. How many of you are web developers in the room right now? Quite a few. You don't count. I'm sorry, there's a very scary man in the back corner. If you are doing anything, go see his talk afterwards. So quite a few web developers, a lot of people raise their hands. And how many of you kind of think you know security? One guy. Again, you don't count. Okay, so if you're all web developers and we're meant to be writing secure code, why don't developers write secure code? Questions, come on. Du kan svara på norsk, skånska, svenska, not Finnish.
Takes too long.
Takes too long. Thank you. Broke the ice. Takes too long? Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Idiot managers.
Idiot managers. Number 2. That counts for nearly everything in life. Number 2. Anyone else? It's hard. It takes time. We haven't a clue. Mainly, it's all a number of different things. Mainly, security is an afterthought. We generally write applications to get to market as quickly as possible because we get paid, correct? If we write applications for these lovely people, we get paid. But we have to defend against this type of person, who is our very posh hacker. Balaclava, tie, Mac. Make a lot of money. Now, security is in general reactive. And I'll tell you why. How many of you have kind of been on a plane lately? A lot of people? Things called airports. They go in the air, fly, things. Anyway, what happens here is many of you have probably been through an airport and go, okay, I've been through the security scanner, put my laptop out, got all my bag out, everything, put all my little electronics. Believe me, when I'm traveling with all my toys, it is a pain in the ass to be behind me. I'm like taking out 4 laptops and aerials and all other sort of gear. But we never had to do that before. Back in 1970, you could walk on a plane with your bag from the terminal into the tarmac and onto the plane. You didn't need it. But a couple of high-profile hijackings changed that. In 1986, they started bringing in very strong electromagnetic scanners. In 2005, we could bring alcohol on board. You could bring your bottle of booze that you brought at home and put it in your bag and put it on your hand luggage and go in. 2005, that changed. It's now 100 milliliters. Why? Because something happened and security measures reacted to said threat. Now, I'm going to put something in front of you that'll hopefully kind of sink in with you. How many of you write into your unit testing or your application testing things like fuzzers, security tests, things that break your application as part of your build process? Anyone? No? Why don't you? My question, if you take nothing away from this talk and you decide to leave now, go off and do that, because I will give you the one piece of advice. There's a guy called Miyamoto Musashi. He wrote a book called The 5 Rings. It is a treatise on strategy and how to defeat your enemy at war. And one of the first premises in it says, you can only fight the way you train. If your application has not trained against a very offensive opponent, it will not stand up when you put it on the web. Because I'm going to ask another question to our web developers in the audience. How many of you have deployed a public-facing website out to the internet? How many of you have told everyone you've done it? One person? You're the only brave man here? Give that man a round of applause. When you write a public-facing website, www.something.com.se, do you tell people, look, I launched a website? Yeah? A lot of web developers do not. And I'm not too sure if it's because they're ashamed they've done a crap job, or is they're kind of like, oh, don't break it, or, more importantly, going, I used to work with a company that we had what was known as beer-driven development, or beer-driven testing, sorry. What this would happen was, we as developers would hand over to the testing department. If the testing department found a bug, they charged us a beer. Okay? Now, when you're a 20-year-old guy in your first job and you're sitting down there going, and you see the testers taking your beers, you start to write very good code. Okay? Now, we learned that it was much more, you shouldn't just rely on testers just to do your job, that you should be building into your code. You should actually be kind of learning to be better about your code, learning that you need to write more securely and try and work out your bugs. But we developers are not very good with writing secure code, and what we end up then having a very, very scary place on the web. So we start seeing things that we shouldn't be seeing on the web. This is such as like a zombie clown. Now, what happens is this. You have written a piece of code. You've left a vulnerability. It then can be used to pivot against someone else. Writing secure code is hard. It is actually quite difficult. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of understanding. However, there are a lot of different cheats that you can use and guidelines that can be expressed or found on the internet to do things. Now, I had a really good chat with a guy called Pa Sicko. He's one of the organizers here. And he mentioned something. He said, how many of you, when you find a security problem in your code, go onto the internet and try and find the cure for that? Google your way out of a problem. End up in Stack Overflow. Most of us have done that. How many of us take the top-rated answer as by default? And then just go copy-paste and just work it out. He found a problem where he said, I have a problem with a cert. I'm not too sure what's going on. And this top-rated answer with 900 answers in it, or votes in it, was the top-rated thing. And it said, just ignore the cert. Don't worry about it. And everyone went, oh, that's great, that fixed my problem. Because it ends up with the kind of thing, it works on my machine, nobody touched nothing. How many of you have done that? Where you press F5, it compiles, it runs, I can go home. Done it? The actual, you've seen shell shock? The actual bug? That was a Goodwill patch that was sent in at 2350 on the 31st of the 12th, 2011. Okay, work that out. That's 10 minutes to midnight on New Year's Eve. That code compiled, baby. I'm going home and drinking champagne. That's what happened when it was submitted. No one did a boundary check on it. And that's what we ended up with, this massive error appearing about 2 years later. Now, I do this talk quite a lot. And I'm just going to do a kind of a nice little rundown of the OWASP top 10, different types of techniques with some information. I'm going to show you some demos of different problems that we can expect, how to find problems in your application, and also different tools that exist right now to go against your application to find these problems. So it's going to be kind of a little bit of back and forth. I'm not going to do all 10 because I've only got 40 minutes. I want to show you some demos. I also want to kind of get your feedback on different things, so try not to be very Swedish and just say nothing. It would be very nice if you could kind of go, yeah, I did that. If I'm talking about something and you've done it and you're doing it right now, go home and fix it. Please. It could be very simple. It might be something you're not realizing you're doing, but it is actually makes your system quite vulnerable. Okay? So, we're going to talk a little bit first about leaving a kind of administration information on your web server. So I'm going to talk to you as web developers again, or people who have web applications, and say, how many of you have kind of written an application, you've made an update, and you want to push the new update to your website? You go online, you just kind of zip up the existing files, you copy it somewhere on the web server, and then you just copy over the new files. Everyone done that? Standard deployment model for a lot of people. Have you ever tried Googling for those files? Do you remember how much you can find? Have you seen what we find a lot? If you now haven't figured out what the actual picture is, there is no chair the whole way across. Okay? The idea here is we are trying to figure out that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Okay? In this case, what we find is that people have left applications with certain administration functions that they should have disabled, built in, left online, and for all intents and purposes there to be visible to everyone else. You can use Daddy Google to go find and hack your way through different websites. Or, if you much prefer, there is a fantastic tool called Search Diggity, which I will show you right now. And what Search Diggity does is this. It is a tool built by Bishop Fox. And what you do is you can use it to find different types of admin info and different things online. For example, we have this thing called the Google Hacking Database. So if I want to find files containing, like for example, it says juicy info, we can do that. And if I click the plus, you can, for example, it says dumping data for table, etc. Any type of error message generated, for example, a error, ODBC access error, for example, which is an SQLI problem. You can also find if there's been an XSS enabled. It can also look for where they've left admin.php unblocked, or it has like the default credentials built in. This is very handy for going scanning your site to see does anything come up in Google's cache, or that you've left something online. We see this a lot with, for example, web servers that are not patched up to the level that we need. If we're looking for specific web servers to try and crack or gain access to. Because unfortunately, it's not always about your code. It can be the underlying software that's a problem. So as we see more and more, this is a very handy way to go looking for information about your web application, see what's available there right now for you to play with, and then exploit that. So if I'm going to be looking to find out about your web server, I'd use this. I'd use another tool called Arachne. Arachne is a vulnerability slash information gathering spider. It's a tool you can get online from and that runs on Linux. So if you've got a Mac, it'll work for you. If you don't have Linux, use a VM with like Kali or something, and you can do something along those lines. It is a very handy way, if you've got a website, to build it into your testing software to say, we should do these as forms of test. They might be manual pre-deployment checks for you to say that this exists, we should remove this, remove them out of the build stage. It is very common to go off and say, for example, index of chat logs or index of. If you've ever done an index of search on Google to go looking for index of temp on a particular site, or even go looking for files in a particular server to say, give me the list of folders that exist on this. A very public example of this is, everyone familiar with robots.txt? Know what it is? Have you seen the whitehouse.gov's old version of it from 2009? Or no, was it 2007 maybe? Before W left. They had in their robots.txt was all the files you shouldn't search. Okay? Which was a list of files on the server that the files shouldn't be indexed, but still existed. Instead of doing the kind of block all things, it went, no, I don't want you to go looking at Area 51 / human remains / saucers / aliens. I just want you to go somewhere else over in Area 52. It's a lovely neighbor. And it exists. You can get a copy of this from right now. However, have you decided to use something like humans.txt instead? So if someone finds that and they say, this is where you shouldn't be looking. Robots.txt is a very good way of finding information on a web server that maybe the developer has incorrectly configured that says, please don't look here. And it just tells the web server, but it's very human readable, it's just text. So these are some scenarios that I'm kind of putting forward to you to understand that these little simple things give me, as a kind of penetration tester, a way of actually finding problems on your server or finding information you may think you've hidden. This is equivalent of just putting the key underneath the mat and assuming that no one will look under the little gnome that says, don't look under me. Okay? Right. Let's go back and show you some more. So, I'm going to ask you a question. What is your password? Yes?
I have no idea.
Good man. Good answer. I have no idea of my passwords either. Use something like KeePass, LastPass? Yeah. How many of you use Gmail, Google, Hotmail, Female, Passmail, some other mail, or in Ireland, all mail? Do you use the same username and password for all services? Yeah, sure. You use multi-factor everywhere. That's cheating. That's security. Okay, if you're not using multi-factor everywhere and then you are using the same password, that's bad. Okay, the simple reason is this. It is known as what is known as cross-pollination. If you're on a computer and you say, okay, I'm going to log in with my email address and I'm going to put in a password, and you assume the developer has been good and it knows what they're doing and they haven't encrypted the passwords, they've hashed them. Does everyone know the difference between encryption and hashing? Yes? This is a good audience. This is usually I just get a, huh? Hash? I thought you just smoked that. For those playing the home game, hi, Mom. Encryption is reversible. Anyway, the idea here is that if you have a web server that is using, say, for example, ROT13 as its encryption mechanism, or the doubly secure ROT26, what you'll end up happening is that if that machine is cracked and that actual database is leaked, your database is now out in the wild. Or sorry, your password is now out in the wild. That password can be used somewhere else, because in general, humans are very, very simple creatures. We don't carry a lot of passwords around because we don't like to. It's the idea that I use a password manager because I just want to remember just one password and everything else is then just random junk that I don't care. But the general user will put out and put their username and password, which will be the same for everything else. Because to them, they don't see the problem with this. The similar kind of thing happened was when I was down in Spain, I wanted to rent 2 cars. And I was arriving about 8 hours after my brother, who I wanted to collect the first car. And I said I rang the company, I said, is it okay if my brother collects the car from you before I arrive? And he goes, sure, sir, that's no problem. And I said, cool, what do I need to do? And he goes, well, what you need to do is send me your credit card number, your date of birth, your full information, your passport by email. And I was like, excuse me? I said, I need you to send all this information. I said, I don't know who you are. I said, well, I'm working here. And I said, I don't know that. Can you send me your information first and then we can compare? And she goes, no. And I said, well, I can't in good conscience send you my credit card number by email because it's not secure. And the answer on the other end of the line was, it's okay. I do this 30 times a day. And I was like, it doesn't make it right. Anyway, I ring home and I say, Mom, I'm sorry you can't collect the car because of this. And she goes, it's okay, Niall, I'll just send her my credit card. I failed as a son. Anyway, it takes me a little bit off passwords, but passwords are people's key to digital lives. They don't understand how valuable they are because they don't care. To them, they're just 6 characters with a number that I have to remember. Okay? So a little bit of advice when I tell people about passwords: you shouldn't leave them out where people can see them, you should change them regularly, and you shouldn't loan them out to strangers, unless you're into that sort of thing. Because I don't like giving passwords to anyone. My wife asked me for the password to our computer, and I go, no. And she goes, I love you, but no. She couldn't understand why I insisted that she had a password I didn't know. She goes, okay, fair enough. Anyway, it's a good thing for your relationship. Keep them all separate passwords. One of the next ones is about patching your systems, okay? You should always make sure that you're running on the latest version or have been patched, etc. Do you want to know how to go find unpatched servers? Right, we'll show you how to find unpatched servers. Unpatched servers exist on the internet. And we use a thing like, for example, Shodan. Here, if it actually turns up. This, for example, is any number of FTP, open access FTP servers that exist in Sweden. And if it shows me what I'm looking for, I might just do Control- a little bit here so you can see. This is open FTP servers that exist in Sweden that have anonymous access enabled. All right. This is Shodan, which is known as the internet or the search engine for the Internet of Things. This runs a lot of scans around the world looking for different servers and queries what they run. It tells you, like, for example, if you want to find all the IIS 6 boxes that exist on the internet right now, you can use Shodan to find that. If you want to go find the IIS 5, etc. If you want to go looking for vulnerable servers that have a very specific vulnerability that you want to attack or patch through, you can. This exists. It is there purely because someone went, I wonder what would happen if I searched every system out there. You can go looking for SCADA systems if you want. I wouldn't recommend it. we all know about what happens on the second Tuesday of every month in the Microsoft world, correct? It's called Patch Tuesday. Okay. What happens the second Wednesday of every month? No, Rollback Wednesday. Something broke. But to bring on from what Jim said, Hacker Wednesday, because it allows you to, if you look at what the patch is actually bringing out and what it's covering, if you reverse engineer the patch, it tells you what they're trying to fix, gives you the attack vector back in. Okay? Patches are a really good way to find out information to see what you should be fixing or what you should be attacking. Now, if we were looking at this in another kind of light, and I want to just point out, this, ladies and gentlemen, is mail.hillaryclinton.com. It is running Microsoft Ias 6.0, which is running on Windows Server 2003. We know this because you can actually remote desktop into hillaryclinton.com if you wish. I wouldn't recommend you do because people in black suits and black helicopters will probably come visit. However, they are doing something a little bit different. They are running, the MX records are actually pointing to Google's app domain. However, the actual idea of this, that something so specific and so quite coming into the news right now would be running on such old systems makes me kind of wonder if their IT guy is actually up to the job. Okay? This requires you to go talk to your administrators, the people that say no when you want to do stuff. Okay? Your systems, like we're developers. Right now, when I started doing development, I knew exactly what type of hardware and box everything was running on. Now it runs in some data center somewhere where I don't care. We assume everything is going to be patched up to date. However, we need to make sure as developers that we actually do this and that it is actually working correctly. Now, I found my nice Swedish joke. This was an error message you had to put together yourself. Leaving error messages out in full production view, okay? Not a good thing. Because the audience in this room can actually read a problem error message. When something comes up and goes like this, where it says, I've got an error in an application that's running in this, I can read this. This isn't just gibberish to me. It also gives me an absolute crap ton of information to understand what I should be looking or should be trying to attack. Now, as we can see here, it's running the .NET Framework 2. It has a file in C clients, IMA, app data, breadcrumbs.xsl. It looks like it's running just C# here. I can see that there's an IO exception. It tells me a couple of things. One, the developer doesn't know how to set custom error messages on to when it goes into production. Bad. Which gives me kind of an idea that maybe it was done by maybe a junior dev, or they don't have a good QA system. Okay? If you are writing production systems, make sure that the error message only gives the user enough information to say something went wrong, we're going to try and fix it. The monkeys in the back will be whipped until it works. And it sends you enough information in the back to say, hey, by the way, something went wrong. This should never be appearing to the user or anyone on the outside. This is for private use only. Now, if you have, for example, Elma, the log management system, or Glimpse, or any of these things that are running on .NET, they use a .axt file. And if this is unsecured and you just go type in, for example, /.axt, and it comes up, or trace.axt, it gives you an absolutely crazy amount of information. I have found elma.axt, which is the kind of logging information. It outputs the username and password of the connection string that it was passed into the database. It outputs a full trace of what was actually happening and any log messages that the developer is actually putting out. So if this is unsecured and you're doing this type of information and putting this out live, it's no wonder you're going to be hacked. This is a very quick fix. In your build step, automatically do a transform that says, okay, production error messages should be on by default, except when I'm on localhost or on the server itself. It's a very simple fix on .NET. I'm not too sure if there's a very similar thing in any of the other different languages, but on the .NET framework, this is very, 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 very easy. Anyone kind of wondering, have they left their log messages on? And want to know if you want to try and, you can go and query the server and just say, okay, start using, like for example, OWASP ZAP or any of the different types of fuzzers out there, you can actually send out a command to try and generate these errors. So if you're running like anything with inputs, use that as part of your build step to actually verify, do your inputs, if they're putting in bad inputs, do they get actual error messages that are human readable back? I'm going to talk a little bit about permissions because this is something I find very, very difficult or very scary in my own mind. Everyone familiar with database connection strings? Yeah, all good with it? Right. How many of you have seen database connection strings running as SA in Windows, like system administrator? How many of you have actually done that in production because you don't know how to do it anywhere else? I'll put my hand up for that. SA is bad, but I'm going to ask another question. Why does search need to have write permissions to the database? Does your search system, or anything that just does a quick search query, does it have write permissions, and why does it have that? Can you not delegate or segregate it out? Because the simple reason is only restrict only to the permission sets you actually need, nothing more than is required. I have seen the ASP.NET web application worker process running on Windows in a domain running as enterprise admin. Now, enterprise admin is domain admin +1 +1. It can absolutely, there is no permission set it can't control. Now, on IIS, there is a thing called IIS 6 metabase compatibility mode. And this just means that you can actually query the IIS 6 metabase and look for two specific properties. One is called IWAM user, and the other one's called IWAM password. Both of those will retrieve back the application pool's username and password in plain text that is being used to run that account. So I have seen in many different scenarios where someone has gone, I have no idea why this isn't working. So I'm going to give it domain admin rights and it works. I'm not going to touch it. However, it is actually quite easy to actually crack that password open and then say, I will actually use that from then on. Permissions are on your back end means that if you actually find a fault on the front end and we can now exploit, there's no problems. We've all seen the old XKCD joke, Bobby Tables. Everyone seen that? If you haven't, go Google it. It's actually very good. It is a very simple thing of where someone's son is named drop tables and just as an SQLi injection. But the problem I actually when I looked at that, I said, this is really funny, but why are they using the bad permission set and allowing for a query to allow it to do a drop? You can secure your database by using, for example, stored procedures and then lock away all the tables. If you're using stored procedures, do not put an actual exec command in there, which does automatically exec SQL, because that's bad. I've seen that before. We actually went into a client and they said, we're really good. We've got a lot of security on our back end. I'm running this, I'm running this, I'm running this. I said, okay, show me how your tables are set up. And I said, this. And I said, so there's no permissions from the web application into the database. And I said, no, just via the stored procedures. So I opened up one random stored procedure, which is called get all customers. And inside was exec at SQL. I was like, and then I just proceeded to show them how to do an SQL injection attack on their query. Now, it's all well and good, but to do this, you need to kind of say, what is the absolute minimum set of credentials and permissions I need to give this application to work? And you should always build up, never take down. The simple reason is, it's much easier to give permissions than to take away. Because if we start with God and we start chipping it away, by the time you kind of get to the point where it doesn't work, you've gone too far down. And people will go, well, I'll just add one back up, or I'll just go back up to God because I know it works. We, as humans and as developers, are usually under so much pressure to write code and get it out the door that this is kind of one of those things. It works on my machine, TM, get it done, I'm finished, let's go home. But when it comes to actually securing your application against this type of attack, it is a very simple way to say, okay, what actual permission sets do I need to use? Now, I want to talk a little bit about XSS and script injection. Have you all seen what is known as the Harlem Shake? Everyone seen the Harlem Shake? Excellent. You want to see a bank do the Harlem Shake? Let's show you a bank doing the Harlem Shake. Right, I have a video here which I want to show you, and hopefully this will work. We might be lucky. Sorry about the sound, but assuming that you can hear the Harlem Shake thing going on, maybe. We might try this. Nope. But this is what they've done is just an XSS reflected XSS attack. And at one point it should just kick in and all the stuff will start doing that. Now, this is an actual XSS attack against a bank. Very, very simple XSS. And a reflected XSS is non-persistent, meaning they've just injected some code in there. But XSS is a very, very common problem. And if we look at, like, for example, XSS exposed, or expose.org, we can actually see the different sites that have been XSS'd. Okay? Right now, these are different ones that have been kind of, the latest ones I think are further down here. We've got different ones kind of, let's see if we've got they have some of the latest ones, and one of the ones that comes up to, like for example, they found this one on Amazon. If we click on that here, it was found on the 9th of April 2015, an accessible attack against Amazon, and they've actually verified that it worked. Now, you can also use a thing called Punk Spider to go find this. This is a very, very cool tool. If you find your website in this, please try and get it off. It's very, very bad. But I like the bottom. It says, we take this very seriously. Use it wisely, or we will take it away. With great power comes great responsibility. Now, if I go in here, and I say, show me all the accessible sites in the .se domain, we should see quite a few, because it's not just I'm taking the mick out of the, trying to upset the Swedes. It's more the fact that it's just everything. So this, what it does is it looks and scans different sites and tries to put in different strings on the top of the query, or on top of the URL. So if we look actually down here on the show details, it will show you the actual, the URL that was used to generate the particular XSS vulnerability. So in this case, is something, Dubrik, and then it just tries to pass in encoded script tag. Now, I have an example here of this being done against Satopia.se. Just a quite simple, quick, accessible site. This was just done this week, and very, very simple. This in itself doesn't look too bad. Who's going to get worried if you just put up an alert? But have you seen Beef, which is known as the Browser Exploitation Framework? And what Beef allows you to do is, if I can I'm just going to switch back here. What Beef is it is a single line of JavaScript to a hook into the browser. And if I can script in that into your browser using XSS, just making the lines jiggle around or just do something Harlem Shake to your actual your browser images, grand. But if I actually inject beef.js or hook.js, I can overtake your browser and send you, like for example, a fake LastPass update or a fake LastPass command that looks like, say, hi, your password manager is timed out. Can you put in your username and password? And as this gentleman will tell you, you only need one password and I get access to everything. Now, I've done this where I've sent a fake LastPass or fake Flash update to someone. How many of you kind of are tech support to your parents or home or general people? You know, I've run an IT, you know, yeah, there's a poor gentleman there going, sigh. How many of you, when you go home and you go, oh, well, can you take a look at the computer? It's acting a little bit slow. And that slow means it's code word for we don't know what's went wrong with it, but can you fix it? And I look at it and I see all these browser bars, you know, with like ads and everything. And I've asked my mom, I said, well, what happened? She goes, well, this thing popped up and it said my browser was infected, so I just clicked download and run. I was like, okay. Along with her credit card and everything, but anyway. So this I can show you, if you want to see how Beef works. Do you want to see what an example of how it actually hook would work? Okay, let's see if this will work. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is Kali. Kali is a Linux distribution that is designed as a pen testing toolkit. It comes out of the box with an absolute crap ton of tools, and one of the exploitation tools it has is called Beef. Beef, as I said, is Browser Exploitation Framework. And what we can do here is, I'll just fire this up, and then I will copy in the URL to another browser in Windows, and I'll just show you how the hook all works together. Okay, because we have a little bit of time, so we might see what happens. This could take a little bit of time. It's on a VM, so I'll talk a little bit more. XSS is very, very common. You should encode all your outputs so you're not actually kind of storing data scripts. If you're storing script tags or any type of scripting output and you're just rendering it onto HTML, try and encode it so it doesn't actually render as the correct HTML for you. So this is a problem whereby someone has taken some inputs into the database or into the from a form and just spat it back out, assuming that everyone is being good. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it's very, very simple. We all play by the rules. Those who are planning to do us harm do not. They don't play by the same rules. So if I look here at Beef, and I'll just control-free log in here. Beef, when we log in, So, yeah, it's got beef. Browser exploitation framework. Now, what I'm going to do here is there is a demo page, and let's see if I can find, or the advanced here, copy link. And I have a Windows 10 box here. So I'm going to bring this up and bring up Windows 10. And if I do, I think it's a Control V. Whoops, I might have it up here. 192 dot 1. Let's see if I have to remember this off the top of my head, so sorry. See, I am running on 192.168. Can't remember my wife's birthday, but I can definitely remember IP addresses. 195.128, I think. And this should bring up a butcher, I hope. Come on. Let's see if this, if I got the right, as a 195. Oh, shit, my mistake, sorry. So I shouldn't swear, I'm on TV. 195. So this is the beef website, okay? Very, very simple. We can see that it just shows me some butchers. We had a very good discussion about butchers earlier on. But this is a very simple site. Nothing scary here, okay? Didn't see anything happen. But when we look over on Kali, I can see my browser is now hooked. So this is information from the browser on Windows 10 sent back to here. So I can tell it, for example, I can send it some commands. Included in this, I've got some social engineering commands. So I can send it a fake flash update. I can do some petty theft. So I'm going to send it a quick Facebook floating div. So I just click execute. I'm going to do nothing else. And should pop up here that will get my Facebook logo as timed out. Oh, wait a second. We just depends on how long these takes. So there we go. I've just sent it a command that my Facebook login is timed out. So when I just type in, okay, Niall@gmail.com, this should be a password, and I click login, nothing will happen, but on my Kali box, I should get a command information that says, here's my data answer. It says data answer is Niall@gmail.com. This password should be this should be a password. It's a very simple injection. If you're just using kind of like, for example, where I will hook your browser, and if I can pass in if you're scriptable if you're running a scriptable Xss attackable site, and I just send in this kind of hook, I'm not going to send up a alert, this site is exposed. I'm going to send off something like this, which does something subtle. To give a case in point, sfshino.com, the kind of the cinema guys, they had an accessible site on one of their promo pages. So you could it would encourage you to send files to, or kind of pictures to people or stuff like that, and you could actually use XSS and then pass them in this information, and then you get kind of this command. Now, this tooling is very, very simple. It does a lot of other things, such as sending like fake LastPass, fake flash, and there's something exceptionally evil. It's called Clippy, where you can actually send a kind of your browser's out of date, please update. So, you know, kill it with fire type thing. So that's beef. Now, if I can do a little bit more while I'm here. Right after this talk, there's another talk on HTTPS and SSL and all that, and Jim down the back is going to do a talk. And I told him earlier on today that I can do what is known as a HSTS bypass. HSTS stands for HTTP Strict Transport Security, meaning that the browser will not actually say go downgrade to HTTP, it will automatically run over HTTPS. However, this is only supported on Firefox and Chrome. IE 11 does not support this out of the box by now. It will support in IE 12, but it does not support it in IE 11. Now, what I can do here is take over a Windows 10 computer when I'm on the same network as it and say, okay, instead of you going to your DNS and your ARP command, or your DNS, you'll query me, and then I will do some stuff in the middle. I'll become a man-in-the-middle attack. So right now, I have got, if I close out beef, I think I'll just kill this out here. If I show you here and I bring up a command prompt, you should be able to all see this. I have ARP -A. Now ARP stands for Address Resolution Protocol. Everyone familiar what ARP does? There's a good nodding in the audience. For some people who don't, ARP tells you where on your network or who has that IP address, what MAC address has that. So you can see right now that 192.168.195.2 is running against -BA. and I'm on 128, and I'm running against -D2, okay? This is a layer 2 attack. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send a spoof command to the Windows 10 box and tell it, instead of using using 192.168 attached to BA as your gateway, use 195.2 attached to me as your gateway instead, and I'll also become a DNS. To do that, I have a thing called the Man-in-the-Middle framework. It's written by a guy called Bytebleeder. It's available on GitHub today. You can go download it. Just go look for GitHub MITMF, and you just, if I run my Man-in-the-Middle script, what I've told it to do is run as DNS. I'm going to use SSL strip and then another one called SSL strip plus. And this was demoed at DEF CON, I think, or else Black Hat Asia in 2014. So right now, this is my previous ARP, and now the new one says 192 is now pointing to D2. So it's pointing to the same one as me, okay? Now, what will happen is this. If I go to google.com, did everyone see what happened? It might be not easy to see on this. Extra W. Good man, good eyes. If I do Windows key and plus, and I move the magnifier a little bit over here, you can see that. It's also running over HTTP, okay? Now, as you mostly are aware, when you go to browse to Google, it goes automatically to HTTPS, correct? Okay, so now I can just look at what you're trying to browse on the internet. Let's see what I can browse on the internet. Come back down here. Why are fire trucks red? Irish, angry. Catholic, pale, ginger, look. So we're not rude. Screw you guys. Oh, okay, let's do something. I want to steal the rude Irishman's password. If I click sign in, and I go back over here, it's gone to account. HTTP account.google.com, not accounts, okay? So I've now at this time, because I'm controlling your DNS, what's happening? You send out a command saying, I want accounts.google.com. I go, I don't know where that is, but I've got account.google.com that maps to this IP address. And it goes, close enough. Well, actually it doesn't. What it does, it means is I send and say, instead of getting accounts.google.com, I'm going to point you to the correct IP address. And then in mid-flight, I'm going to take out all the HSTS stuff because it doesn't match. The HSTS says, I want you to go to accounts.google.com. I say, well, I'm pointing to account.google.com. It goes, they don't match. Account's not equal to account. Therefore, it's okay. So what I'm doing is, because I'm interrupting your flow here and I'm kind of adjusting stuff, I've now just spoofed the website without having to spoof the website. So I can type in here, if I close this out, sorry, excuse me, and go Niall at, am I out of time? Holy crap. At gmail.com, and go say password, and I click sign in. I can go back to Kali, and I'll see down here, I should have Niall@gmail.com, password is equal to password, and I've got your Gmail password. Now, if you're like Jim and you use two-factor auth, it's okay, there's not a problem. Right, that is a HSTS bypass. Jim will show you in the next talk how to stop doing that, okay? But this, ladies and gentlemen, is why you should never kind of exist on the same network as someone and be very careful. I was kind of worried when I saw the Wi-Fi here. If I dropped in here and did something funky, I could, do things. This is a very common problem because it is very difficult to detect and for users to spot. Even though you're relying on new technologies, etc., it is actually quite difficult to work with. So, as I'm running a little bit out of time, and that's unfortunate, yes. The number one kind of thing you should remember is we are developers. We need to protect our users against these type of attacks. We need to understand that we, as developers and whatever, have to take responsibility for this. What I want you to do is look at the offensive techniques that are available today and say, okay, how many of those can I factor into my build process, into my testing process? If you are not using defensive or offensive tactics to build your defense strategy, you're doing it wrong. The best defensive strategies are forged by fighting against offensive opponents. Boxers only box against the bag to get fit. They box against real opponents to learn how to box. You should try out your application against all these tools and see how they react. So, some nice resources. There's an OWASP top 10 by Troy Hunt, which does a great job of doing explaining a lot of the different techniques and problems out there. You can get clickjacking which is one of the kind of ideas behind the beef stuff here as well. This will all be available on the website, but if you want to take some photos, please do. You can check using a safer web, another one of Troy's accounts. What it'll do is it'll verify if you're doing anything bad against your web server. There's some Ias resources here. Again, these are mainly, some of these are kind of out of date now because of the fact that we're going to swap over to Katana and different OWIN middleware. But a lot of things like URL scan and how to configure security are very, very good. These are the tools I used. So this one I definitely think you should have a look at. Okay? You can get nearly all of it on kali.org. Download it. It's available as a VMware image. Just download it and off you run. OWASP Zap is phenomenal. Use it. It's like Fiddler, except you can do a lot more fun stuff with it. And then you have, like, for example, the Search Diggity, the Exploit Database, Showdown, Exposed, and Punk Spider. They're the ones I showed you online how to find things. Some image credits. Information if you want to contact me or ask me some questions afterwards. I will be here for about 15 minutes before I got to run for an airplane and then go through scanners and etc. Questions in the last couple of minutes. And I'm sorry, I love the Swedish chef. I know he sounds Norwegian to all the Swedish people, but you know, I'm Irish, so I get to take the mick out of that. Anyone questions, comments, problems? Yes, sir? Anything? Yes?
I have a question regarding the logs. When logging, when using the software as a service,
yes.
Logly, Splunk,
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
When using those as a service, yeah. This do you as in how to expose them or?
No, like because in the past days when I was logging, so
yeah.
we logged like localhost.
Yeah, exactly.
Today we logged
to Splunk and to other different services. As long as they're running endpoints as HTTPS, and I think generally they do, and you're not exposing those APIs out, I think you're fine. But just like, you know, don't expose your logs as an endpoint that, you know, you can get to publicly, unless it's an administrator and it's secured and you're using decent authentication. Last questions? Going once? Going twice? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.